Here today. We're grateful to have you coming, and we hope to be doing this yearly. So we're making sure we're doing the right things, and everybody knows what those right things are, because things change continually, and we want to make sure we're doing them right. I'm Joanna Bellotta, City Clerk. My assistant, Elizabeth Betsy Clerk, and Betsy McNiff, the Assistant Clerk. And my License Commission, the Chairman of the Commission is Dan Serenfield. Then we have I'll go alphabetical. Glenn Fossa and Rick Boscard, and they're the three license commissions. You usually meet with them as we're renewing or you're requesting add-ons or additional things within your license. So with that, is he here, Ralph? Yeah. Oh, okay. So Ralph, if you want to come up, this is Ralph Salcamore from the ABCC, and they're going to take it with his team from here.
Well, thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
My name is Ralph Sacamone. I'm the Executive Director with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Alcoholic Beverage and Control Commission, and I want to thank everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to attend today's seminar. Today's seminar is all about helping each of the licensees to be successful and stay in compliance. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk from license applications to amendments of applications to different statements and sections of the law that people, I think for some reason there's a fallacy out there. You believe you can do this, but it's really not legal. We're going to tell you exactly what you need to do. What has happened in the past is the past. We're moving forward today. But part of my team today that will be presenting today, we have Kyle Gill, which is our General Counsel. Also, we have Tom Carroll from the U.S. Department of Labor. He's going to talk about wage and hour and child labor, which is very, very important now because there is all new guidelines and everything you need to follow in existing guidelines. So it's a great point that Tom's come out here today to help us. He's part of the presentation. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the ABCC, which is Jean Larizzo, to do some opening remarks. Jean?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We want to thank the City of Fitchburg for having us and for putting this together. This space is great, perfect for our seminar this morning. And thank you to Clerk Bellotta and Betsy for putting this together. We really appreciate your help with this. It's honestly our pleasure to be here. We love getting in front of as many licensees as possible. And as Ralph said, our goal always is the same, and that's compliance. We want to provide you with what we think is important information to help you remain in compliance and to have a successful business ultimately. That's the ultimate goal. So our team has put together a great presentation, which we'll go through today, and then you have the handout that you can take back with you, and then we'll be here for questions as well. So thank you again to the License Commission, the chairs here, the complete commission is here, and we really appreciate that. So thank you all very much.
Okay, let's begin. I promise I'll get you out of here between 11:45 and 12 o'clock, maybe even sooner, depending how we move along. Everyone should have this handout in front of you. This is the PowerPoint presentation. It may be in white, it may be in pink, it may be in blue. I was just trying to utilize all the paper we had at the office, so there's no difference between the color. All the information is the same. Also, you will find this on the ABCC website, and we'll show you where you can find it later on if you want to use it. The reason why we print it out, and we're also going to do a PowerPoint presentation, so you can use this as a training guide. All right, you can bring it back to your license premises. You can make any notes you need on it, and if you ever have to refer back to it, you have all the information there. All right, we don't believe in just putting a PowerPoint presentation and people trying to write it on a blank piece of paper. You should be able to put any notes and everything that you need. All right, what is today about? Today is about compliance. We want to move forward and help out all the licensees to stay compliant. And one of the biggest issues that we see all the time is amending your application. For instance, let's start off today about changes to existing license. What I mean by that, everybody in this room at one time had to apply either for a new license or a transfer to get possession of your license. Once you get approved, do the three-step approval process. That is getting approved at the local level in Fitchburg by their commission. Then it comes to the ABC. The ABC investigator reviews the material. He comes out, does an on-site if it's required. Then he'll make a recommendation to the commission. There's a three-member board. Two of the three have to agree to approve the license. Then we send back the approval to the town of to the city of Fitchburg, and then Fitchburg issues you a hard copy license. At that point in time, anything you change on that license has to be approved. If you bring in a new manager on, a new stockholder, all right, an existing shareholder is leaving, and you're going to replace him, all of that has to be approved by the three-step approval, which is the city of Fitchburg, the ABC, and then the amended hard copy application will be issued to you. And why are we saying that? Because Chapter 138 is the Liquor Control Act. In the Liquor Control Act, there are statutory disqualifications of certain individuals when they have ownership in a license, or there are character and fitness requirements for someone to hold a position as a manager or an officer, a director, a shareholder, an LLC manager, an LLC member. All of that needs to be approved. So one of the biggest violations we see is that a shareholder leaves and you bring in a new shareholder. All right, that person just might be giving you money to operate and not running the day-to-day affairs. That is still a violation if you do not get it approved by the local board and the ABC. We don't want to see that happen. And we have made it so easy for everybody to file an amended application. If anybody remembers years ago, back in like 2008, 2009, all the applications, no matter what you did, used to be 15, 20 pages long. We streamlined it dramatically, all right? The most intense application is a newer transfer that has the most documents because it's required. But on an amendment, we have some documents down to 2 pages, all right? Each amendment has a checklist, and it tells you exactly what you need in the checklist. When we go to our website in a few minutes, I will show you exactly all the checklists, what you need to be successful. So if you look at the most common problems we see is change of ownership. All right, so if anybody here is deciding, just saying the next month ago, you're going to sell your license, or you're going to transfer it, okay, no problem at all. All right, whoever you're selling it to, the buyer is going to file a transfer of license application. It is your responsibility to maintain control of that licensed premises until the three-step approval process is complete. We see a lot of times right now is that when the seller signs the P&S, he kind of just steps aside and lets the new people begin to run the premises. That's a fallacy, because that license is still under your name, under your entity. You're responsible for the taxes. You're responsible for the liquor liability insurance. So if you are selling your license, until you see the new person's name on that hot license that you're going to sell, that you're going to display in the premises, you are still responsible for their actions. We have seen it many times. All right, that instances have happened during transitions, and the transfer was never approved. All of the hardship falls back on the actual seller or the present licensee. Does everybody understand that? So you cannot surrender authority until until you see that new entity's name on that actual hardcore license. Also, transfer of stock or issuance of a new stockholder. If you want to bring a new investor, you're welcome to. There is nothing preventing that. But you have to follow the amended process. Now, if you are a corporation, it's very simple. You're just going to file a transfer of stock, transfer of ownership, okay? If you are an LLC, it's the exact same process, but the terminology changes. There's no stockholders in an LLC. It's called beneficial interest. All right, so if you are an LLC and you're bringing in a new investor that's going to be an LLC member, just like a stockholder is in a corporation, you have to file a change of transfer of stock, issuance of stock, or new stockholders, or what we refer to as beneficial interest. It's all the same. The process is the same. It's just the terminology changes depending what you have as a corporation setup. The next item that we see right now, people change the name of their corporations. And we have the same issue going on right now. We have a licensee in Nahant, Massachusetts, who changed their name 5 years ago. All of a sudden, they're getting around coming into the ABC to change it to their new name. We asked for tax releases. We're looking for the tax releases under the old name because it's required by law. All right, the taxes have to be satisfied. So when you go to the DOR or the DUA, and that name has not existed for 5 years because you changed with the Secretary of State and you never changed with the ABC, that's a violation. it's almost impossible to get those tax releases. So you have to go through all of this additional hardship to make sure with the DOR, they have to send a special letter that you did change your license and all of the taxes are filed, but it's wasting your time. Sometimes it takes up to 2-3 months with the DOR to straighten that out. So if anybody's changing their corporate name, you want to make sure that you file properly and you get approval on it before you actually begin to work with that name. Does everybody understand that? Also, change your DBA. All right, change your DBA is just doing business as. So it's a Sacramone Corporation doing business as Ralphie's. All right, it's a very easy process. If you're going to change your DBA, it's one of the few transactions that doesn't cost you anything. It's free. All right, all you have to do with changing the DBA is go see the city clerk, Joanna. She'll give you a new business certificate with your name on it. Then you will take that and you'll file the application with the ABC. All right. Also, if you go down, the next one is change of office, directors, trustees. So if you're a club, like a fraternal organization, you change your offices every year, you have to file the application to change your offices. The same rule goes for corporations, same rules go for LLCs. All right, you have to file a change of office, directors, treasurers, trustees, whatever it is. If it's a boat club, if the Commodore is classified as the president, you set your articles up that way. It's the exact same thing you do. You do not realize the issue that we have when our investigators or our commissioners are reviewing the application. And why is it important to change the officers and directors? Because the previous secretary is the one most likely signing the new form to move forward, because the new secretary hasn't been approved yet. All right, so that's why if you don't want an application returned to you saying there's an unauthorized signature here, because that person was never approved as the president, the secretary, or the treasurer, it's just going to delay your process. And none of those people have any authority over the licensed premises in their new positions until they're approved. And they all fall under the character and fitness. If there is ownership, they fall under the statutory disqualification requirements. And what are those? It says right now is if you have ownership in any license in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there are 2 statutory disqualifications. If you are a package store, all right, all package stores, if any of the owners have a felony conviction, you're automatically disqualified from holding that license. And then there is a statutory disqualification on the remaining licenses for anything that's on premise revolving what we call the Section 12, which is on premise consumption, restaurants, hotels, clubs, taverns, retirement care facilities. It says anyone has a felony narcotics conviction. And that's just not with the state, that's state, federal, and military. All of that, you are disqualified from holding the license. That's why you need to file that application in advance. All right, so that you can get the statutory, to make sure that they meet the statutory requirements. Any questions on that? Also, continuing on renovations, alteration of premises, okay? We love to hear that your business is booming and you need to expand to next door. That's great news, we want that. Or you're gonna move to a larger building, all right? So you're moving from 10 Main Street, you're gonna move down to 20 Main Street, which is the building's double the size, that's great. But you have to come in and file either an alteration of premises, because you're expanding next door and connecting, and you're just taking down a wall, or you're changing location. All of that has to be filed in advance. There are requirements on it where advertising is required, a butters notification, all right? And once you are approved, and we see this violation all the time, when you get approved to the local board, it does not give you the authority to use that new area. You have to go through the 3-step approval process. So the local board will approve it. The ABC will be assigned to an investigator. An investigator will actually come and do an on-site to make sure that the premises meets the classifications and the policy and procedures we all have forward, and that it matches what the local board has approved. And then it'll go to the commission will approve it, and then when you can move into it, when you get your new hard copy license where it says the new description on it, that day you can begin to serve alcohol. We have a lot of people in advance that decided to knock the wall down next door, but they applied with the town, or the city or the town or the municipality, but they never got approved. Officially do the 3-step approval to go next door. That's a violation. So if the police department walks in, they're gonna look at your present license. It's gonna say 3,000 square feet at 700 Main Street. Then all of a sudden, you got another 3,000 square feet at 710 Main Street. That's not on the license, that's a violation. So you're serving alcohol in a non-licensed area. We don't want you to happen. What I'm telling you, all of this happens frequently. This is why we're trying to get out in front of everybody to stop it in advance. Then you also see the most popular one is change of manager. We don't know how many times we go into a premises, my investigators will walk in, just doing their routine check, not that you're even in trouble, and they say, can we speak to the manager? And the gentleman says, I'm the manager. So they say, okay, what's your name? Ralph Sacramone. Well, they have a cell phone with them that tells them everything on the record, all right? Or they have a laptop. It tells who the manager is, who the owners are, and they said, oh, no, the manager is Joanne. Oh, Joanne hasn't been here for 5 years. Hello, that's a violation. So the person running the facility has never been approved by the local board, the ABC. All right? One key thing on that. I'm going to jump back to a manager, eliminating another fallacy in a minute on manager. Also, changing hours and changing location. We already talked about changing location. The other one is changing hours. If you were originally approved to operate Sunday at noontime to 1 p.m. in the morning, 7 days a week, and if you decide, oh, Monday's a dead day, we're going to close on Monday, you have to come in and amend your license, all right? Because you asked for that, you were approved to operate 7 days a week. From that time frame, that's okay. Now, if it's bad weather and you close early, there's no problem with that. But if you decide to close every Monday or every Sunday and Monday, we have licensees decided to close Sunday through Wednesday and open on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's a violation. Without local board approval, because a license is a privilege, it's not a guarantee. And what the local board looks when they issue a license, all right, is two things. Is there a public need for that license? And the public need is a license they issue 7 days a week. That's why they gave it to you. If you decide to only open as a nightclub and open on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, that is a violation if the local board has not approved you and you decide to change your hours. Does everybody understand that? And if you decide you want to close early, all right, you don't want to stay open to, what's it, 1 o'clock or 2 in Fitchburg?
Either one. They could get a late close for 2.
Oh, yeah, at 2. So you say you decide you're approved to close at 2 o'clock, and you decide, okay, we're just going to start closing at 1 o'clock all the time. You have to go to the local board and get the hours changed. All right? And the same thing, if you're allowed to open to 1, you just can't take it upon yourself to go to 2. You have to get, as Joanne says, you have to get the late night closure to 2 a.m. Does everybody understand that? Because what happens when the police department comes in, all they're going to do is look on your license. Your hours are listed on your license. So if you're supposed to close at 1 and you're open at 1:45, that's a violation. If you want to stay open and get permission, file a change of hours. There is no fee to that. It's just like the DBA. It's free to do. You just file it. You need a corporate vote to change it, or if you're an LLC vote, whatever you would need to do, you submit it with the board. Once the board approves it, you can change that hour immediately. You don't have to wait for ABC approval on that. So you need to do that. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
What about closing hours really on a day-to-day basis?
The day-to-day basis, if you are assigned to be open to 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, you're supposed to meet those hours. You're supposed to be in compliance to what you agreed upon and what you approved for by the board. Now, if it's a weather situation or for some reason you have an emergency to go to, that's not a violation. But if you decide every Monday and Tuesday to close at 10 o'clock and you were originally scheduled to close at 12, all right, you need to go in and amend those hours. That can be a violation for not operating the license under the required hours that you were approved for. And there was another question here?
On the renovations, are you talking about, like, say you're just gonna paint the store or like put up new signs or something? Is that considered a renovation?
No. What happens on a renovation is really to do with fixed structures. Say, for instance, this is 2 rooms with a wall running down the middle. You decide you want to make it 1 big room. You take down that wall, that's a permanent structure. You take that round, now it changes the description. Because on our description, we're going to look at the original, it's going to say 2 rooms, all right, 50 seating in 1 room, 75 seating in the other room. Now we walk in, it's 1 big room. Is this the same licensed premises? So if you're taking down any fixed structures, you're building any new bars, you're remodeling the bathrooms, or you're opening up from petitions being taken down, that's what we consider to be a renovation. If you're moving next door, that's a renovation. All right? If you're moving across the street, that's called a change of location. If your address is changing, all right, and what I mean by changing is if you're going from 10 Main Street to 15 Main Street, which is across the street, that's a change of location. If you're expanding from 10 to 12, which is right next door, and you're connecting it, that's not a change of location. That's an extension of premises. What we classified that as an alteration of premises. And then the good thing about it is when you go into to find out who your abutters are and everything, and that's a time where usually the building department will give you the new address. The address will be 10 or 12 on the building through the assessor's office. That's what you want to give to Joanne, that the address now is just not 10 Main Street, it's 10-12 Main Street. This way, all the records line up properly, and it'll say that right on your license. Any questions on that? Yes?
Not on that, but you keep saying the three-step program, which I understand. What's the time frame on that?
Time frame is, first of all, there has to be at least 10-day advertisement with the local board. So you got to try to line it up with their meeting. All right, so on the 10th day, the local board can approve it. Then we have a new a seller licensing program that as soon as the local board approves it or within the next day, they submit it electronically. It's no more snail mail getting to us. So they submit it electronically. Once we receive it, it is assigned immediately to an investigator. If everything is correct on alteration of premises, we're usually 3 to 4 weeks to have it done. Now, that's if everything's correct. If you're missing the right to occupy and you have to go get a new lease, that's going to extend it out. If you don't have the right to be on that premises, or you have other information like you have to show a proof of funds that you're building out, and if you have a problem with that proof fund, that's going to delay it. That's why, like we say, you want to expedite it, look at the checklist. Checklist tells you everything you need to submit it. So if you're looking at the process and trying to time it right with the board, you got to figure 4 weeks with the local board, 4 weeks with the ABC. If you have that, that's 8 months, so you can plan out what you need to do. Now, can we approve it while construction's going on? Yes, we do pre-approval. All right, which is no problem. We do these with the hotels all the time in Boston. They come in front of us, they're building a new Hilton hotel. We're looking at a stack of diagrams and everything for pre-construction, but they get their license in advance. It's just not issued by the town until they have their occupancy permit and everything. But you can get your license in advance, or you can get pre-approval on any type of construction plans. So that's a good way for you to coordinate it. You don't have to wait for approval from the local board and the ABC. All right, you still got to get your permits from the building department before you begin construction, but you don't have to wait for us to approve it for you to file your application. You want to try to get everything going simultaneously. So it saves you while the construction's going on, the process and the application. Any questions on that? And then the last thing we talk about, a change of manager. I want to eliminate one of the fallacies that are out there. A manager does not control the status of a license. We get these calls all the time. Oh, I'm the manager of Sacramone's Pub. Ralph just fired me. You have to go down there and close them down because there's no manager. It doesn't work like that. All right? A manager is responsible for the day-to-day activities, but he does not control the outcome of the license. So if as you know, as an owner, you have to let people go sometimes. Some people just quit. Some people just don't show up to work no more. So what happens, basically, you want to communicate that immediately to the local board. You want to let Joanne know in writing that Ralph Sacramone is no longer the manager. We're actively seeking to find someone. Anybody that has been approved on the license, any officer, director, stockholder that it's already been approved can assume that role temporarily. Like, I'm going to say, I'm going to be covering the manager's duty till I find a new manager. Then it's up to you quickly to find a new manager. You can't wait a year. No, I know sometimes it takes 30 or 60 days, but at least you communicated to the board saying, I'm covering it right now, we're actively seeking. That's where the communication comes in. All right? If we walk in and the manager's been gone for 3 years now, and some managers have died. Some of these clubs have never replaced them for 10 years. All right? So on the records, you're actually committing perjury when you're signing the renewals saying that the manager's Ralph Sacramone and he died 10 years ago. All right? That's a violation. You don't want that to happen. So you want to communicate with the board, let them know what has happened, and then you go from there, because we always get, especially with this disgruntled employee, we'll call and say, you got to go down there and shut them down right away, especially a lot of the clubs we get that on. Any questions on that? All right, the next area right now, we kept this in the presentation to let you know because there's a little confusion out there right now. As everyone knows, outdoor seating has always been allowed, all right? If you wanted to sit outside, if you wanted to have an outside deck area, it was always allowed. What happened, it got so popular during the pandemic, is when the restaurants were shut down and you only could have 25% inside, everybody all of a sudden expanded to outside. It's not a new process. So right now, with the extension that was filed back in 2020, it no longer exists. It expired on April 1st of this year. So the streamlined outdoor seating, which means you just go to the local board, and they would give you permission with all the right documents to go outside, that was allowable up to April 1st of 2024. It is no longer. If you want to do outside seating, you have to go do the three-step process to extend your licensed premises. Now, there are some legislation up there that is pending, all right, that may make outdoor seating and the streamlined process permanent, but has not been approved. Does everybody understand that? So right now, if you want to go outside, all right, you want to go do the three-step approval process. And a lot of people are gearing up now so they can open either the middle of May or beginning on June 1st. Remember, plan 8 weeks, 4 weeks with the local board, going through, and also with the ABC. So you want to make sure you're out when you start, you're 8 weeks away. So if you go in today, you're really talking about the middle of June to get open. That's why if you want to do permanent dining, get it approved now, it stays on forever. Everybody understand that? When you renew your license, you renew your outdoor seating all at the same time. It's all part of the premises. Does anybody have any questions? I wish I had more information on the legislation if it's going to move forward. It's just tabled right now why the House and the Senate is in session trying to work through other issues. Yes?
One's existing, I've had a patio for over 35 years, and it's all enclosed by back of my bar. I have to go reapply for that now?
No, you're all set. You already been approved. If it's permanent, you're all set. You never have to worry about it. All right, that's what I'm telling you. With the temporary ones, if you know it's successful and you have the right to occupy, you want to do it every year, get it permanently approved. And that's what we've been talking about over the last 3 years, and a lot of people have done it. A lot of people have moved permanently on it. Any questions at all on this? Yes.
For businesses that might be, I don't want to say caught in the middle, but the pandemic era expedited method sunsetted on April 1. If a business wants an outdoor patio, but the legislature hasn't approved that permanent approach, they would embark right now on the traditional approach, you were calling it the three-step approach. As they go through that, if the legislature were to make that pandemic era approach permanent, and I realize I'm speaking in hypotheticals. I guess what I was trying to do was think of how businesses would plan. I guess they have to plan in the conservative approach, which is what's the rule right now, and that's the traditional approach. If it were to change while they're midstream, I guess we cross that bridge when that happens.
Well, I'll give you the best example. We'll adapt. So if it changes midstream, there's a way to adapt, and it's controlled at the local board because the new legislation is really puts all the onus on the local board's approval. So we can make in the mix, all right? But like I'm saying, like we've been telling everybody since I think it's been, I would probably say November of 2020, if you want outside seating, get it permitted. Get it all set, ready to go. There's all guidelines on our website. If you take a look at them, and we'll show you an example where you'll find them, it tells you exactly how you're going to run your premises and so forth. And make sure that everything you state, everything you do, you are required to control the premises. Everybody understand that? So if you have an outdoor area, that's why we're required to be fenced in. And we don't care how you fence it in. You can use planters. People are using Jersey barriers. People are using pallets connected together like fencing and all of those things. It's okay because you're responsible to make sure when that alcohol is served in that approved area, they have to stay in that area. All right? Especially people are extending out into parking lots. You don't want to see the police drive in and there's somebody standing by their car with a bottle of beer. That's a violation because it's outside the area. And it's your responsibility out on it. And like we tell everybody with outdoor seating is you want to make sure you got view from inside the restaurant that you can see what's going on, the manager. Or if you don't, you put a manager, put a supervisor out there at all times to control when the alcohol's there. And you're responsible for the neighborhood. A lot of these are right in the middle of the neighborhoods. You're responsible for making sure that whatever you're doing does not affect the neighborhood in a negative way with noise and everything else that's going on. Any questions? All right. This is we placed this inside of the application. This is our website. And why I want to talk about this at this time is that we have set our website up to be so user-friendly. All right, this is where you will go to find those amendment applications we talked about for change of manager, change of stockholders. directors, everything else, you find them all here. It is so simple to deal with, all right? Everything is there that you need. All right, we're going to click into it now. You're going to go to our homepage. You're going to see these 3 buttons right across the bottom. One says alcoholic beverage for a state license. One says alcoholic beverage retail license, and then frequently asked questions. The license everybody in this room has, unless you are a brewery, winery, or a distillery, you have the middle one, is an alcoholic beverage retail license. If you click onto that, you come to 2 more buttons. It says, apply for an alcoholic beverage retail license, either new or transfer. Everybody in this room, unless you're buying someone else's business, you will go to the next box, which says amend the retail license. You click onto this, you page down, it gives you every single amendment I talked about. When you click on one, we'll go to change of manager. You click onto it, it gives you additional information. Here's the application you click on. All right? It tells you exactly what you need to be successful. Shame on you if you submit an incomplete application. You bring it to Joanne and her team to file, and you're missing stuff, it's all there in front of you. All it is delay in the process. Here's the problem. If the application is incomplete, the local board may not take action upon it. They may table it until you produce the information you need. What's that do? That delays you to their next meeting. All right? So you want to make sure you're using all of the checklists. Now you click onto the application, page 1, there's the checklist right there in front of you. All right? You page down to the amendment. It's titled Change of Manager. That's all what we call the monetary transmittal page. And then everything else you need, every box should be filled in. I don't care if it applies to you or not. Write NA in it. Just make sure everything is there. What we get on this question, Kyle, can you go to just the manager page for a minute? What we get all the time on it, we get it all filled up. Back up 1 minute, Kyle. Right there. You get to this right here, we find empty boxes. All right, how can you submit this application if it's not complete? It talks about your previous work experience. It talks about date of birth, social security number, your address and everything. It talks about your background. We see all the time, if you go right there in the 3B, it says, are you a U.S. citizen? There's not yes or no. How can we vote on it? Because you have to be a citizen to be a manager. So we can't vote. The local board can't vote on it. We got to send it back. All right? And then the same thing is, it talks about your criminal, if you have any type of felony. It says yes or no. Then it talks about the information, and if you do have one, and it's not a statutory disqualification, we just want a quick affidavit. Oh, on this day right now, I was charged with disorderly conduct. That doesn't disqualify you, but it does allow the local board and the commission to look at your character and fitness. All right? So that's what you want to look at. Also, employment history. We want to see if you have what your employment history is, and so forth, and then also talks about disciplinary action, and then the manager signs. You have to sign that page if you are the manager. How many times we get this blank? All right, so this is information. Then it goes down the applicant statement. That is signed by someone that has authority in the corporation, either the owner, stockholder, secretary, president, and then if you continue down, you will see the entity vote. It talks about naming the person. We get these blank with no name to appoint the manager, so how do we know who they appointed? All right, I know we're laughing and chuckling, but this is how we get the applications. This is how important it is not to slow down the process. The proper signatures down the bottom will be an officer or a director, and then there is the query request form. Query request form is required for all managers. All right, and that's very simple. You take that query request, you go to a notary, the notary checks your ID, he stamps it that it's you officially, that he has witnessed, sign that query authorization. We take that, and then we run it with CGIS, it comes back. Now, what we do is you compare that to the manager's application when they ask you the question. Do you have any type of felony conviction? If you answer no, and we find out on your record that it's yes, did you just perjured yourself? That's grounds not to approve the application. And if you're honest and you say, yes, I had a disorderly conduct when I was 18 years old or 20 years old at college, commission looks at that, the local board looks at that, and then they judge moving forward. That could have happened 30 years ago. So most likely you're not going to be denied. But if you answer the question incorrectly or falsely, that's grounds for denial. Every application is set up like this, no matter what you go through. The checklist, all the documents, fill out everything, and before you turn it in, just double check that everything is there. It's not Joanne and Betsy's job to make sure you have everything. Their job is to process the application, get it prepared, and get it to the commission. Any questions on that? Yes?
Very briefly. and I work for the city, but I'm working with businesses. Oftentimes, a business applicant isn't sure if they should or need to hire an attorney to go through this process. I now realize it's a personal decision on their part. You've explained it fairly clearly. If they have the patience and detailed focus, it sounds like, you know, they don't have to use an attorney, but I'm assuming that use of an attorney assures that those blanks are not blank, because that hired person is going to make sure that the thing is complete before it's submitted to
It is, it's your choice. Some of the applications are so easy. Change a DBA, you don't need an attorney for. Change a manager, you don't need it. If you're going to office of directors and you're changing your articles, you may want to refer to an attorney just to make sure your Secretary of State matches up, the corporate vote matches to everything you need, and that the reason why a lot of people hire attorneys for that is to make sure your corporate bylaws are approving what you are doing in the right manner, because then it can be challenged by any other corporate officer. That's why you may have it. And a lot of these other ones, you do not need a manager. Yes?
It's really whatever the applicant is comfortable with. If
Right.
they- You know, like you just said, it's not, we designed the website so that we hope that we use it and that it's clear and easy to understand. So it's really whatever the applicant is comfortable with. Ralph, do you mind if we just touch on the signature too?
Absolutely.
It's not a real-
Yep. So right now, since the pandemic, everybody knows a lot of the governmental offices now are accepting authorization, electronic signatures. Okay, with electronic signatures under the ABC, we do accept them, but you have to use a way to prove that it's done. Either do DocuSign where they create the number underneath that, all right? What we're seeing is a lot of people just cut and pasting their signatures in, and there's no way to verify that it was something that was signed properly through one of the methods, and we don't care what method you use. We're not saying one is better, DocuSign is better than fill and paste or anything like that. It's up to you. You just want to make sure that it's either a wet signature, which you're signing with a pen, all right, or you're using some type of DocuSign or something that gives you the certification code underneath it. Does everybody understand that? Because a lot of people are cut and pasting names into it, and then the commission says, okay, this doesn't look like a signature, and you got to send it back, and it wastes a lot of time. So you want to make sure. On our website, we will be putting the instructions on what we're going to accept and what we're not going to accept for signatures, so that is moving forward right now. So if you click on it, it'll tell you right now, this is, if you're using this electronic signature, we need to see this. Does everybody understand on that? Yes. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. All right, Kyle, go back to FAQs. All right, you look at this third button right here. We did this, we have changed all our FAQs, right? We have taken the most common asked questions. We have categorized them together for restaurants, for hotels, for package stores, for pub breweries. All right, we have all classified them all together, and we put them in 12 languages. So every main language is online, ready to go. This is a great training tool. If you want your employees to review, do something else, which is great about this, this is 24/7. Because what happens on a lot of the owners, when do you start getting on a website? 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock after you're closed, looking at what you got to do, and so forth. So this is active 24 hours a day for you to find the information you have. And then if you have any additional questions, as you know, we're very easy to contact at our office, and we'll help you out and answer any questions you need. We've taken a lot of time and effort to break it down to every category. It even talks about cannabis on this, on licensed premises, the do's and the don'ts. Everything is right onto it, from package stores to everything else you can think of. All the main questions there. You may not find the question you're looking for. Just pick up the phone and give us a call. Either Sean Walsh, who is my head of licensing, my deputy executive director, Ryan Melville, is available, myself, and also Kyle Gill, our general counsel, is available along with our entire licensing staff and investigation division. We'll be able to answer any questions you have. We'd rather have you ask the question to us, all right, than go ahead and do it and have a headache. All right, because 99% of the time we can figure out the right way to do it. All right, that 1% of the time where it may not be allowed, we tell you right there. And then you can't do it because of this. So you may have to seek legal counsel is the correct way to do it. Any questions on that? All right, Kyle, jump back to the main page. All right, down here more, if you page down a little bit more, actions and services. Okay? This is a continuation of what you see above. You see ABC publications, you see resources for the LLA. That is really what the local board will use. Betsy and Joanne will have all that information they need there. You have our enforcement division, special license and permits, how to pay online, because you pay everything online with the ABC. All right, and then you have ABC appeals violations, the hearing calendars, if you need a public records request, and also direct wine shippers, that's a different state license. All of that is there. You click onto that, everything you need. Remember I talked about outdoor seating guidelines? If you were to click on to commission advisories and you page down, all right, they had every single year all broken out when we have amended each one. All right, and if you continue down, you see right over here, advisories regarding further patio extensions. It's right there, and takeout of alcohol, and then it gives you every update that's going on right now. All right, so, and then if you would continue on further, the commission had a public meeting approving guidelines for outdoor seating. All right, and it tells you what you need to do, how do you need to keep the premises contiguous, and what manners you need to follow up on. All of the information you have there is right on our website to direct you through. Any questions at all? And if you want a copy today, or if you want to show somebody this presentation back at work as a training tool, if you go back to frequently asked questions, click onto that page down to the bottom, and you'll see Duxbury, Fitchburg, and Somerville. Those are all happening over the next month. Just click on to, all three of them are the same. It's just a different title and cover page on each. So everyone, there's the presentation you see today, what we're talking about, what Tom Carroll from the U.S. Department of Labor is talking about, it is all there. So utilize the website. It's a great tool for you, very easy to do. Any questions? All right. The next page we're going to talk about in the handout, all right, is purchasing alcohol from authorized sources. Here's one of the fallacies we're going to eliminate. In Massachusetts, everybody in this room is a Massachusetts licensee. All right? You only can purchase alcohol from authorized sources. What is an authorized source? Any Massachusetts wholesaler, any Massachusetts manufacturer. So let's put aside right now, going to New Hampshire, going to Connecticut, going to Rhode Island to buy alcohol because it's cheaper there or there's a deal over there, that is a violation. That's actually classified as bootlegging. You cannot bring unauthorized alcohol that is not sold in Massachusetts. You cannot purchase it and bring it back into the state and sell it at your facility. We see it all the time. You know how we get tipped off? Not that my investigators are geniuses or that the local police department we get it from your competitors. Your competitors tell us right off the bat. We have one come in saying, listen, on Thursday afternoon at 3:30, there'll be a white van pulling up, unloading a tremendous amount of alcohol. And they gave us the site and everything. My investigators staked out, here comes the white van, 3:30, 4 o'clock. They unloaded. The ABC investigators let them unload all the alcohol, bring it into the facility. We walked in and we said, can we see the invoice for that? They give it to us. The invoice is a New Hampshire liquor store. So what happens here is two things. You went up and you paid cash for that alcohol, right? We confiscate it all. We charge you with buying from an unauthorized source, so you come to a hearing at the ABC. If you are fined in violation, you don't get that alcohol back. It's all destroyed. All right? It goes out to a hazardous waste material plant out in Lakeville, and they destroy it all. So you lost, never mind the cash you put up, you also lost the product. All right? So that's key right there. So if you're going over state lines to buy alcohol, you can't do it. Second of all, Costco, BJ, Sam Clubs is not a wholesaler. They are nothing more than a package store. Everybody understand that? So if you're going to BJ's to buy alcohol, you're going to Costco, Sam Clubs, any of those big box stores, they are nothing more than a package store. You cannot buy from them. Next is consolidated buying. If you own two licenses, you own one on Main Street and one on Broadway, you cannot transfer the alcohol between two locations. All licenses are site-specific. Everybody understand that? So everything that goes to 10 Main Street has to be sold there at 10 Main Street. If you decide to transfer from 10 Main Street to 25 Broadway, you create a double violation. One, the person selling the product or transferring it to the other location is acting as an unauthorized wholesaler. So that product gets confiscated. Second of all, the person receiving it is buying from an unauthorized source. So you end up with a double violation. So we do not want that to happen. Now, the question comes up to us, what if I run out of a bottle of vodka and I run to the package store? We do not go looking for those. Everybody understand that? We go looking for the people who are operating their business out of buying all their alcohol from a package store. Everybody understand that? All right? And we don't have to look far. Your competitors will call you. All right? And it's very, very simple. When we come in, all we do is they ask to see your invoices. All right? And we went into one facility, and it was a restaurant, and we asked to see the invoices. They had no invoices for a year, but they were operating for the year. All right? But we went in, and the employee gave us all the invoices from a package store down the street. So you got the violation, they got the violation. All right? We don't want that to happen. So if any of that's going on, moving forward, it's forgiven in the past, we're moving forward on this right now. Everybody understand that? And then the most dangerous thing, we're seeing there's a trend now of people driving around, all of a sudden they come into your facility and say, listen, I got 5 cases of Johnny Walker Black. I'll sell it to you for $200 a case. Now, we know those are $500, $600, $700, $800 a case. All right, oh, people jump right on, they buy it. You're taking a chance because there's a lot of pirated alcohol out there that it may not be Johnny Walker in that bottle. And then you are responsible for it. Never mind, you're going to have a problem with the ABC, probably the Attorney General's office. If anybody gets sick and die, you're going to have a problem with the feds also. So everybody understand that? If everybody remembers at the beginning of the pandemic, what happened down in the Caribbean, there was a lot of pirate alcohol what was going around. 8 people died from it because they didn't know what was in the bottle. So it's important. Anybody showing up trying to give you a deal, it may not be the deal. It may not even be that product in the bottle. All right? So just heads up on it. You're talking about putting people's lives in hands. And never mind all that hard work you've done to build up your business. If anybody gets sick from alcohol there or passes away, what do you think that's going to do to your business? How many people are going to be coming into your place knowing that there was an issue there? So remember that on the big thing. We're seeing more and more of that, all right, across the board. Any questions? All right, we just talked about if you own a restaurant or a package store, or 2 restaurants or a package store, you cannot transfer the alcohol back and forth. That is a violation. All right, delivery of alcohol. This has become very, very important. All right, during the pandemic, we saw an increase of 300% in delivery of alcohol across the country. All right, and those aren't the ABC numbers. Those are numbers coming from the Restaurant Association. All right, that's how much deliveries have peaked. All right, and everybody knows with Amazon and Wayfair, you can get anything you want delivered. Alcohol is allowed to be delivered. You always could deliver alcohol in Massachusetts. It just got so popular during the pandemic. Now, who could deliver alcohol? It was always package stores. Package stores always had the right to deliver alcohol. All you had to do was come in and get a transportation license from us. All right, and that is a Section 22, Chapter 138, Section 22 for each vehicle. It's a $150 license. All right, you apply directly with the ABC. You can deliver anywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So if you're a package store in Pittsburgh, you can deliver to Lunenburg anywhere you want. All right, with that one license. If you have 2 vehicles, you got to get 2 permits. Does everybody understand that? And then one key thing to remember. What you do at your brick and mortar, you also do at the front door. And what do you do at your brick and mortar? You check what? IDs. All right? As you check when someone's buying at the register, you also have your delivery driver check at that door. And I'm telling you why. Kyle's going to get into compliance checks. The ABC and local police are doing compliance checks on deliveries now. The kids have figured it out. What package stores do not ID on deliveries? We had the same issue going up around the Boston College area. All right, we did a compliance check, 19 compliance checks on one company. How many do you think they failed? All 19. What's that tell you? Because the delivery driver wasn't trained. So if you're having your own people deliver it, okay, you want to make sure that they're trained, that you're checking on it, and I don't care how you figure out the auditing that is done right. If you're making them take a picture, scan and checking the ID, whatever you can to protect yourselves, that's what you want. Because you're extending your license to that front door of that premises. All right, and with that permit, yes?
Well, I know back in the day, taxis could deliver, and I don't know about Uber and Lyft, but is that still a thing, or would that be out of?
Yes, that's the next part of the delivery we're going to talk about. So you have delivery you control. You get your own permit as the owner of the package store. Can you use an employee's car to deliver? Yes. You're just going to register that plate under the transportation permit. Can you use your own company vehicle? Yes, you can. Just each permit matches the plate. Everybody understand that? So you can't be flipping permits back and forth. You have to permit the vehicle. And why do I tell you? Because if the local police sees alcohol being delivered, they come up to you and say, can we see your permit? You have no permit, they confiscate that product. State police do it all the time when they pull a vehicle over on one of the highways. All right, at 495, they pull it over, they see there's 300 cases of alcohol in the back. Can we see your transportation permit? They don't have one. Product gets all confiscated. We don't want that to happen to you. Get your permit, and you get them in 24 hours, basically. You come in, you file right online, pay your fee, everything's all online. Once we get it, it's very easy to move forward. All we're asking for is a registration, a corporate vote authorizing it, okay? And then at that point, the permit is tied to the licensed premises. Any questions? The question that came up here is about third-party delivery companies. It's totally allowed in Massachusetts. You have Uber, DoorDash, all right, GoPuff, all of those are allowed to deliver, and even taxi companies can deliver, as long as they present to you that they have a Chapter 138, Section 22 transportation license. And on it will say express transportation. And it'll give you the year and the date. You want to make sure they have that license. It's an express transportation under Section 22, and they're all current to the year. So it runs on a calendar year, so the license will run January 1st to December 31st. That goes for all of those transportation licenses. Same thing with these companies. You want to make sure that they have policies and procedures in place so you can audit them to make sure that they're delivering the alcohol to someone that is of age 21 and older and that is not intoxicated. Just the same rules you'll see at your premises is the same thing you'll see moving forward. Does everybody understand that? And don't take it upon their goodwill that they have a license. You want to physically have that license. Let me tell you why. If alcohol gets delivered to that person's house and they don't check the ID and there's minors there, that minor leaves there and hurts himself or hurts someone else, any good attorney is going to bring it back to where the source came from, all right, during the entire suit process. Even though the delivery company is responsible, you think about it, they're going to bring it all the way back to you. So it's important that you make sure the procedures are in place and you check them. You can check nightly, you can check any way, the way to audit them that they are doing it. All right, a lot of these companies now have really gone in line since the commissioners took a hard stand against that company where they actually revoked the license. All right, so now everybody's got policy and procedures, they got training companies, they got compliance companies, work with them, don't take it upon yourself. All that hard work could be gone in one issue. So just remember that, what you want to do. Sir, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm a brewery, so I manufacture beer. What are the requirements for me to transport kegs to a beer festival?
All right, you can. As you're already Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 19D. You're the only manufacturer that's allowed to have a license under Section 12, which is on-premise consumption. No other manufacturer can have that. All right, but one of the things you gave up when they gave you that license is you cannot self-distribute. You must use a wholesaler. But you also get another benefit. You have the benefit of making your own beer, selling it for on-premise consumption, getting a Section 12 and selling other people's beer for on-premise consumption, but you also have the right to sell up to 2 gallons of alcohol to go per order. So that's what eliminates you from doing self-distribution.
But if I'm taking beer for a beer festival in which it's being poured as tasted, not for sale, what are my transportation requirements?
I think there's 2. Number 1 is you can't deliver it. You're totally prohibited of it. You have to use a wholesaler. So if there's alcohol being served at that beer festival, there has to be some type of license on it. Because Section 2 says sale or delivery. What I mean by that is sale is you're selling it for consumption money, or delivery is mean you're delivering the alcohol to someone who's drinking it for no charge. So you have to make sure there's a one-day license there, number 1. And number 2, you would have to go through a wholesaler because a keg is too big, it's more than 2 gallons for them to buy directly from you to pick up. So you have to use a wholesaler. They have to go to a wholesaler, pick that up, or your wholesaler is going to have to deliver it to you to a beer festival. There's no area that license can be sold without a license in the state or delivered. All right, so someone's having a festival, the local, if it's in Fitchburg and alcohol is being served, you have to go get a one-day license, all right? The only other way it's allowed for beer to be sampled if it's on a licensed premises. For instance, Section 15, you can do sampling It's written right in the law, but you can't charge for it. So if you want to promote this wine, you want to promote that vodka, you can do sampling right on it. On our website is all the guidelines for sampling the amount you have. That's totally legal. If you want to do sampling on a Section 12 at a hotel, that's all legal to do. Once you leave the licensed premises, alcohol cannot be sold or delivered without a permit. And that's where you would have to go to the local board. And you see a lot of one-day license. What a one-day license is giving that person the authority to go purchase alcohol from a Massachusetts wholesaler or manufacturer. They can't come to a package store, they can't come to a restaurant or anything. That one-day permit, they go to a wholesaler, and then the wholesaler can deliver the product, or if you want, depending if you're having a 3 or 4 day festival, you can come to us with that one-day license, and we can give you a transportation permit, where you can go pick it up at the wholesaler, because you might not meet the minimums, and the wholesaler's not gonna deliver, so you could come with us and deal with that. All right, or you can use an express transportation company with your one-day license to go pick that up at the wholesaler and bring it to the premises. The problem you have, you're capped because you cannot self-distribute. So the only one that can deliver for you would be the wholesaler itself that you have. Now, there's pending legislation to correct that. All right, to move forward. It's pending right now. We've seen a bill, I think, back, was about 2 months ago at the Chairman Tacky's thing. That was one of the ones that moved through with favorable action. So that's the problem you have. You're kept. He's a pub brewer, which is a little different. He brews his own beer. He's allowed to sell it, but he's also allowed to have a Section 12 on-premise restaurant. No other manufacturer can do that, but he cannot self-distribute like the farmer winery breweries and distilleries can. I saw your hand up, yes.
You mentioned picking up from the wholesaler. As a restaurant or a bar, if we don't hit a minimum and we want to go pick up the thing because they're not going to deliver it, do we have to get a transportation?
Yes, you do.
license to do
Just
that?
apply for a transportation permit. It's good for the entire year. You can go pick up what you need. And it's a good thing, emergency thing, in case you're really busy on a Wednesday and Thursday and you already got your delivery in for the week and you need more, you can use that permit to go pick it up. You want to make sure you have the permit in the vehicle and the invoice. So if you get pulled over by any of the police department or an ABC investigator comes up to you, you have that. That's your proof that everything is there correctly. We set it up for you to win. You just got to make sure you have that information in the material there. Any questions? Now, up to April 1st of this year, you could sell a restaurant, a Section 12 on premises, a Section 19 Farmer Series pouring permit, winery, distillery, or brewery could sell alcohol with a meal to go from your restaurant area. That is no longer in existence. That expired on April 1st of 2024. Same thing as along with the outdoor dining, there's pending legislation to make it permanent as long as it's served with a meal, but it did not pass by April 1st, 2024, so we're at the same situation we were pre-pandemic. You're not allowed to do it. And if you do continue to do it, here's the issue you have. Your competitor's going to call in on a complaint. We're going to have to follow up on it because we follow up on every complaint. I don't want you to have a headache. Everybody understand that? So if you're still doing it now, all right, you have to cease. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Kyle. Kyle Gill is our general counsel. Kyle was promoted in November to the general counsel of the ABC. Before that, he was the associate general counsel. If anybody has ever been in trouble with the ABC is at a violation, Kyle used to be the prosecuting attorney on behalf of the investigation enforcement. All right, now he works as the general counsel directly for the agency and advising the commissioner and myself. So I want to turn this section over to Kyle.
Thank you, Ralph, and thank you, everyone. It's great to be in Fitchburg. I'm going to speak, they're not always this easy, but first we're going to talk about compliance checks. The ABCC, I think, just started last week conducting compliance checks throughout the Commonwealth. What they do is with an underage operative, they'll go to a municipality and they'll go to every package store and on-premises licensee in the entire municipality and see if they're going to serve this underage person or sell them alcohol. How you pass a compliance check is easy. You ask them for an identification. As soon as you ask them for an identification, they turn around and walk out. They don't present you a fake ID. They don't tell you they left it in their car. They turn around and walk out. I do not believe Fitchburg may not have been tested last year. You may be tested this year, and that's how you pass. You pass by asking them for an identification. If you use a delivery company, like as Ralph mentioned, an express transportation company, they are being tested as well. So you may want to make sure that whatever company you use, they have policies and procedures that they showed you, that they're checking IDs, and you may actually want to test them, ask them, is there any record you can show me that shows this was done each night? Or have someone make a purchase and see if they ID them. There are ways to test them because ultimately it's sale or delivery. So if the delivery is made to an underage, arguably you're the company that made the sale. So you want to make sure your partners are doing the right thing and at least have policies and procedures in place because that helps protect you. Does anyone have any questions on compliance checks? All right, and as I mentioned, they're not always that easy. Not always are an underage just gonna turn around and walk out the door once you ask them for an identification. A lot of times they have fake IDs. And this is what I'll talk about right now, and that's the types of licenses or types of identifications in the Commonwealth that you're allowed to reasonably rely on, and there's 6 of them. It's a Massachusetts driver's license, a Massachusetts liquor identification card, a Massachusetts identification card, a military ID, a United States passport or a passport recognized by the United States government, or a United States passport card. Now, reasonably rely, what that means is it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card, these 6 types of IDs, because if someone presents one to you and they don't look like they're above 17 years old, you can argue what they showed you. It's not reasonable that you relied on them. If they look nothing like the person in front of you, did you really reasonably rely on it? I think the answer is no. But where it does help you is, say, someone's using, an underage 20-year-old is using their older brother's valid driver's license. They might not look identical, but they're brothers, they look similar, maybe similar heights, similar color hair, similar facial features. You look at the ID, it's valid, you serve them, you sell it to them, they take it out. Maybe a Fitchburg police officer sees a person with a youthful appearance now in possession of alcohol, goes and inquires, finds you in violation. You have a hearing before Fitchburg or the ABCC. You have a defense under the law here. They presented you one of the licenses you're allowed to, or one of the identifications you're allowed to reasonably rely on, and it looked like them for all, I mean, in this case, they were brothers. Under those facts, the Fitchburg or the ABCC, they may find you not in violation. Now, what's not on this list is out-of-state driver's licenses. So it doesn't mean you can't accept them. If someone presents you an out-of-state driver's license from, say, New Hampshire, and they're 22 and they're actually 22, it's not fake, there's no violation here. However, if it's a very good fake or they are using their older brothers, you accept out-of-state licenses at your own risk. So you're not able to use that same defense in front of the ABCC and in front of the Fitchburg License Commission that you did with the Massachusetts license. It's just not available. There is legislation that may change that. We actually voted on it, I believe, our last statewide election to change that in the law. It has not passed yet. It has not been signed by the governor. So as it is right now, there are still only 6. And the one that's missing that people always talk about is those out-of-state driver's licenses. Another part of, especially even on-premises licenses, and this is really a strict liability issue too, because you have to have you're responsible to have close supervision of your premises. That's people handing off alcoholic beverages to people underage. So you made a sale and delivery to someone of age, they handed it to someone who was underage, and now they're drinking in your establishment. That is something that you want to monitor for, because ultimately, now the violation's not them selling or you selling or delivering to them, it's the violation is they're in possession of alcohol on your premises. You weren't keeping close enough supervision. Does anyone have any questions on those topics? Yes, sir?
But it was my understanding that if someone presented you with a reasonable ID, that it turned out that it was not a really valid ID, that they somehow forged or created a situation in which they created a passable form of ID that you take it and check it, that they committed a felony and that we wouldn't be held responsible for the felony they committed.
So that's true that if you have a fake ID, that there's, I believe it's there's different laws, misdemeanor and a felony for that person, but there's also a charge, it's Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 130, Section 34, that prevents or prohibits someone from selling or delivering to someone underage. So there's a violation on both ends there. What our investigators will do is, the law only protects valid identifications. Sometimes the fake identifications are very good, and there has been times where a fake Massachusetts driver's license has been presented to our investigators, and they actually will just give the clerk or the bartender a warning because they thought this is a really impressive ID, even though it's fake. But if it's not one of those types, those 6 types, I haven't seen our investigators at least give those type of breaks. So in general, with out-of-state licenses, whether it's fake or not, you accept them at your own risk. Are there any other questions? Yes, in the corner?
So when they come and present a fake ID at the premises, can we seize their fake ID if we come to it's a fake, or we have to give it back?
I would recommend calling the police. You can always discharge your duty by calling the police. I think you run the risk sometimes of, is there a chance you're incorrect? Could it be legitimate? I think the best, in those circumstances, I think the best thing to do would be to contact the police. Does anyone else have any other questions? Move on to the next slide. All right, this is called the last place to drink, what's commonly referred to as the 24J report. And I'll explain what, in fact, that is. When someone's convicted or pleads guilty to operating under the influence in Massachusetts, as part of their plea, they're asked by the clerk magistrate, where did you have your last drink? If they name a licensee, that's recorded by the clerk. It's kept, and a copy is sent to the ABCC, the Attorney General's office, and the local district attorney's office, as well as the premises itself. Now, receiving this notice in and of itself is not a violation. We're not the keeper of records, and sometimes, to be completely honest, they're not always the most reliable. We've seen times where the defendant told the court that they were at a Red Sox game, and then if you just looked at the schedule, you saw that the Red Sox were in Toronto. So they're not always the most reliable. However, when they are tracked, so if you received one of them, maybe our ABCC investigator is not going to visit you, but if you've received 3, you have a half dozen more, which some licensees in the state do. An ABCC investigator is going to go undercover on your premises, probably a busy time, probably at night, and they're going to probably purchase a drink. They'll act like they're drinking it, and what they're going to look for is people showing signs of intoxication, and that's where the violation comes in. When people are showing signs of intoxication, they're loud and obnoxious, they're using objects for balance, they're swaying side to side, they're slurring their speech. This is what they look for, and if they're making themselves known, now your employees should have known or should have known that this person is intoxicated. Once they are served an alcoholic beverage thereafter, that's when the violation occurs. So they're intoxicated, they've made themselves known, and now after they've made themselves known, you should have known or do know, you then served them an alcoholic beverage. That's where the violation comes in. It's with underage and service to intoxicated, they are public safety issues, so the more violations, you got to run the risk of having your license suspended and potentially worse if the conduct continues. In general, all licensees have a duty to protect themselves, their licensees and their patrons from foreseeable harm. So as you can see here, there can be problems that can extend outside the premises that, as Ralph talked about, a lawyer is going to bring back to you. So these are, you obviously train your employees to look for these signs and to make sure that once someone is showing signs of intoxication, they're not served, because ultimately they can have dire consequences for your business. Does anybody have any questions on that? Nope. Okay. Hours of operation. So in general, statewide, you're only allowed to utilize your alcoholic beverage license for the hours you're approved. Now, municipalities a lot of times do have specific rules and regulations with regard to last call. 30 minutes before, Fitchburg might have something specific on the books that they may want to mention, but just in general, statewide, you can't be utilizing your alcohol license beyond your approved hours or before your approved hours. The ABCC and the, most of the time, authorized agents of the local licensing authority, which is usually the local police, they have a right to enter your establishment and to investigate matters that are under their authority. It's actually a criminal law. It's Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 63A, and it prevents hindering these authorized, usually local police department, or an ABCC investigator from performing their duties. So hindering, obviously physically obstructing them. We see people locking out of rooms, saying you can't go in here, not letting them in to begin with. These are examples of hindering an ABCC investigator or an agent of the local licensing authority. The violation is taken, is always taken seriously at the ABCC. It also includes giving out information. So, say, for instance, you have surveillance that you have it for 30 days previously, and you're requested by either the ABCC or an agent of the local licensing authority for, say, surveillance a week ago. You have it, you destroy it, you delete it. That's when Section 63A can also come into play. Does anyone have any questions on that? Yes, that's a misnomer that I know we tried to resolve here. I know a lot of people spend maybe more time at their business than they do at their own homes, but you don't have this, it's different than your own homes. ABCC investigators, local police that are authorized agents do not need warrants to enter your licensed premises. It's just not, it's different than your home. And at this point, we'll talk about club licensees, and I'll turn it back over to Ralph. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, I always save this separate from everything else on club licenses. Okay, let's talk about what a club license is. A club license is like a fraternal organization, the Knights of Columbus, the Elks, the Moose, the Saints clubs, the Veterans clubs, the Marine Corps Club. All right? They are an on-premise consumption under Section 12. All right? But what's unique about these clubs versus all other licensees? They are for members and guests of members only. They are not open to the public. They do not have a 24-hour license, as some people think they do. They have to buy alcohol from authorized sources. So to encompass all of the fallacies along with a club license, you will operate in your normal hours that you've been approved for. So if it's from 8 a.m. on Monday through Saturday to 1 p.m., those are the hours you operate. If it's from noontime on a Sunday to 1 p.m. or to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., those are the hours you operate. A club is not open 24 hours a day. I see people smiling. This happens. We see them all, from private yacht clubs to private golf clubs to these fraternal organizations. Second of all, you are not open to the public. You cannot be running, oh, come Friday night, 2-for-1 special on chicken wings and you're serving beer. That is not open to the public. Those have to be members and guest of members. The local licensing authority has authorization to apply any condition that is reasonable to a club licensee. For instance, requiring a sign-in book for members and non-members, requiring that the non-member must leave when the member leaves, can restrict how many times a non-member comes to that facility, all right? So I want everybody to understand, you cannot be advertising in the newspaper a Super Bowl party in the club members hall. You can't do it. That is not what the club license was set up for. You are not open to the public. Now, can you have a function hall? Can you raise money for the association? That is all under approval of the local board. Knights of Columbus has a function hall you can rent out. The Elks has it. That's not a problem. All that money has to go to the nonprofit organization. You get permission to have that hall under your license. That is great. But all the other rules apply. as we talk about for members, guest members, everything, especially where the premises is licensed. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to talk to me after. If you think your club is not running in the right manner, we'll help you out and we'll work through it. Also, the biggest issues we have on clubs is not updating their managers and change of officers and directors. Everybody understand that? Also, premises. I know some of these clubs have a big piece of land. If you're only licensed to serve alcohol in the building, that's all you can do. If you want to extend outside, you can do it. You can get come in for an alteration of premises, but until you approve, that's what you need. Does everybody understand that? And sometimes right now, another thing we're seeing with a lot of these clubs, promoters are showing up, saying, hey, listen, I could sell out your function hall. I'll take a piece of the action and you'll get all of the proceeds from the alcohol. That's an issue. You understand what I'm saying? Because you're opening to the public. It's not for members and guest members. So be very, very careful if you get that. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and give us a call saying, listen, I've been approached to do this, I've been approached to do that. We'll help you and walk you through the process. But remember, there is a lot of issues of clubs out there. There's a lot of clubs that are not operating as the way they're set up according to their articles, especially as members get older, a whole new group of people come in and they're not running it the way the club should be according to their charter. So we want you to all be prepared. We're seeing a lot of this out there, and we just want you to be successful. We want the clubs to survive. I know a lot of the fraternal organizations are struggling right now with membership, but we just don't want you to end up jeopardizing yourself. You're still required to carry alcohol liability insurance. You need to have that, all right? You still need to file your taxes with DOR and Department of Unemployment Insurance, so you're not exempt from any of that. And the reason why I tell you, so when you come in to do a officer and director change, we're gonna ask you for your taxes. And how many times? Oh, we haven't filed taxes in 15 years. All right? We want to tell you up front, you want to make sure that you may want to be consulting an attorney that represents the club as you begin to move forward some of these areas that you may need some help on. Any questions at all on that? Yes. It's up to whatever the local board wants. And most likely, it's a lot of the guests have to have a sign-in book, all right? So, but if the guest is signing in, a lot of boards require who is the member that's sponsoring for that day. That's why you might have to have the sign-in for both.
But the member doesn't have to sign in as long as they have a card.
Sure, absolutely, yep. But you got to remember now, I'm only saying you can do that, but if the local board imposes this, I mean, there's a condition that's reasonable to make sure that the person is right in the club who's ever sponsoring that person. Does a member coming in every day have to sign in? No. That's something you really don't have to deal with, but it's dealing with everything else. Any questions? No questions? And then the last thing before I turn it over to Tom Carroll, I just want everybody to understand the fallacy. You are responsible for what happens inside and outside of your licensed premises. So this is why we talk about it's very important to work with the local police department. If you foresee an issue, you are responsible to take action to protect your employees and your customers. For instance, if you see two guys starting to alienate against each other, you can't, like the old days, push them outside and let them slug it out outside. Because if somebody gets hurt outside, that started on your premises, you're responsible. So if you see anything like that happen, don't hesitate to call the police. You're not going to be penalized if you're preventing danger. You may be penalized if both those people are intoxicated and they were drinking at your premises. All right, that's a different issue. All right, and the other issue you get protection on, too, is you can't count for someone sucker punching someone in a place. All right, somebody goes up out of the blue, just punches somebody and a fight starts. That's unforeseen. But if that does happen, you have the responsibility to protect your patrons and your employees. You need to reach out to the police. All right, you do not want this spilling out into the police, into the neighborhood. It's the exact same thing we talked about. You may be responsible. So you want to make sure you're utilizing the police to your advantage, all right? And we say this all the time. A lot of the complaints we get from the neighborhoods, they're right on the money. They're saying people are being overserved, they're leaving there drunk, passing out on the sidewalk, all right? And when we investigate it, 90% of the time it's true. So what do you think is going to happen at that point? The ABC is going to send some undercover investigators in, or the local police department, and then we're going to witness the overservice. That's going to be a violation. All right? We're going to witness the unruliness and everything, that you don't have control over what's happening there. All right? So we want to give you as a heads up right now, you need to control your premises inside and outside. Very important right now, as Carl talked about, is the videos. Videos protect you. All right, so if anybody that is using videos, but if the police department or the ABC is asking you for video, that's something you talk about. If you refuse to give it, it's in the process of hindering an investigation. We just want everybody to understand, we're not out to get you, we're out there to help you. But you gotta help yourself, all right? You do not want this spilling in, you don't want an altercation that you foreseen spilling out on the street, then you end up with a Donnybrook in the street with 20 or 30 people involved. That all falls on you because you foreseen it and you did nothing about it. Any questions? We talked about working together. That's the whole situation we just talked about, and assistance with everything you need. The next slide I want to talk about, this is important to you, and I'll take about 10 seconds on this. This is the DIA. If anybody doesn't know what that means, it's the Department of Industrial Accidents. These are the people that oversee workman's comp. And why do I tell you how important workman's comp is? Other than the fire chief, the police chief, and the building inspector, this fourth person can shut you down on the spot. Everybody understand that? Fire and building department can shut you down for safety reasons right off the bat if life and property is in danger. Same thing with the fire, same thing with the police chief. If he gets there and there is a riot going on, they have the right to shut you down to protect citizens from harm and yourselves. The other person that can shut you down the spot is DIA. So everybody, how important it is to make sure you have a current workers' comp policy in effect at all times. Because if they shut you down, you can appeal it. You're going to be fined $250 a day, and the earliest hearing you get is 10 days. So right off the bat, you're out $2,250 right off the bat. All right? So it's important. A lot of people renew their license, they show their workman's comp, and then they let it lapse. All right? They run that report every day at midnight. And every day at midnight comes back from the insurance company saying this person's plan is out. You be prepared for it. There is a website here you go to, all this workers guys, tells you if you're exempt from workers' comp, okay? If not, utilize this information here. This could save you a lot of headaches. Any questions on that? All right, the next person that I want to introduce you up to is Tom Carroll. Tom is with the United States Department of Labor. Tom and I sit on a task force together, all right, about employees' classification, misclassification, and employees' rights. And one of the great things they have over here with the U.S. Department of Labor, Tom is going to cover wage and hour. All right, and it's very close to pay attention because there's a lot of different rules between state and federal law. Also, he's going to talk about child labor. With the shortage of resources out there and the ability to find people to work, we're finding more and more people under the age of 18 working in licensed premises. He's going to give you all the guidelines and everything you need on it. Tom?
Thank you again. My name is Tom Carroll. I'm going to try to make this quick because you guys had a lot of information thrown at you. I mean, when I give presentations, they're 8 hours or a week, so there's so much information, but I'm just going to give you some general problems we find in the hospitality or restaurant industry to give you heads up on it to prevent it from happening. So I'm from Wage and Hour Division, and I'm federal, but as you know, Department of Labor has state and federal agencies, so it's very important to know that you have to comply with both. So you know that when you hear about minimum wage. I mean, federal minimum wage is still $7.25. No one's going to work for $7.25 in Massachusetts. And then state minimum wage is $15. So if you're complying with both, you're going to pay the $15 minimum wage. Same thing with overtime in the hospitality industry. Under state law, it's not a requirement to pay overtime at time and a half in the hospitality industry. But under federal law, it is. So in that scenario, you would have to comply with both again. So you do have to pay overtime in the hospitality industry. So with wage and hour, we enforce a bunch of laws. The majority of our job is the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's minimum wage, overtime, child labor, and record keeping. We also do a lot of other cases with government contracts, Davis-Bacon, where prevailing wage must be paid. We do all the agricultural workers, any farm workers. There's specifics on what they do, the housing, the safety, all of that. That's another thing. We do our Family and Medical Leave Act. We do non-immigrant visitors that apply for H-2A visas that work on farms or, do apple picking or those types of jobs, seasonal, et cetera. But I'm just going to focus on the hospitality industry and try to make this as quick as I can. But, under the FLSA, it's the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it's very complicated, but the 4 topics you need to be aware of is minimum wage, overtime, child labor, and record keeping. So on minimum wage, I'm going over some information on tipped employees because you may encounter that in your establishments. But obviously, the employee has to receive $15 an hour under Massachusetts law. If someone's a server or a tipped employee, they're considered a minimum wage employee. And as we all know, that most servers make more than $15 an hour. On a good night, they'll make, up to $40, $50 an hour with their tips, et cetera. So, but it's, one thing you have to know about is if they work overtime, how much are you supposed to be paying them? If a server is a minimum wage employee, so you can't make any deductions. A lot of problems are that an employer may take money off of a server if a table walks out, or if something's broken, or if they put in a wrong order, or something like that. Even though the server is probably making more than $15 an hour, on paper they are a minimum wage employee, so there can't be any deductions other than the standard deductions of taxes, et cetera. Even like uniforms or anything like that, if they're required to buy them, you would be in violation of the minimum wage because it undercuts the $15 an hour, even though in reality, we know they're making more than that, but that's like that gray area. Same thing with bussers or bartenders, et cetera. Just remember that they're minimum wage employees. And that comes into working overtime. If that server or bartender is working overtime, remember they're a minimum wage employee. So if you're paying them $6.75 an hour, which is required under the state of Massachusetts, if they work overtime, you can't pay them time and a half of $6.75. You have to pay them time and a half of the minimum wage, and the minimum wage is $15. So overtime rate would be $22.50. However, since the company is taking a tip credit of $8.25, you're paying them $6.75, and you're taking a tip credit of $8.25. You can use that same tip credit in the overtime minus that $8.25. So the bottom line is that if someone's working overtime, you have to pay them $14.25 an hour plus tips. It's the most common error we see whenever we do any type of restaurant cases. Even the workers themselves don't know that. And I know that a lot of servers or bartenders probably don't work overtime because their shifts are only, 6 hours, and they may not go over 40. But if they do, just realize that, because once someone leaves a company, that's when we usually get complaints, because they're like, oh, I hate that place, I'm going to get back at them, I'm going to find out I was never paid overtime. And we look at 2 years of records, and any overtime that was worked, you have to pay that, and then liquidated damages as well. So my point to everyone here is that if you're kind of getting away with some issues, just remember that once an employee leaves, you're not friends anymore, and they're going to do anything they can to get any additional money after they have left their work. Another issue with overtime is a lot of restaurants a lot of restaurants will pay a salary to their kitchen employees. Not every salaried employee is exempt from overtime. A lot of people don't understand that. There's 5 categories where there's an exemption for overtime. You have to be an executive where you supervise 2 or more employees for more than 80 hours a week. Then there's administrative, which means it's someone pretty high up in the company that makes decisions that affect the profit or loss of the company. There's a minimum salary requirement as well, but it has to do with the duties. Any job which requires a 4-year degree or specialized training, that person's exempt. Certain certification like teachers, et cetera, they're exempt from overtime because they're making the minimum salary, plus their duties exempt them from the overtime requirement. It also affects computer programmers and outside salespeople. Outside salespeople are exempt from overtime and minimum wage. It's almost like they're an independent contractor. They're exempt from those requirements, but if their job is totally outside sales, not inside sales. So to go back to the kitchen workers, we often see at almost every restaurant we go to, the kitchen workers, they'll usually have a schedule, and it's a 50-hour schedule. They'll get a check for $1,000 each week, a salaried employee for $1,000 per week, and their schedule is 50 hours a week. So we look at, their duties. Are they the kitchen manager? Usually the chef and the kitchen manager are the only 2 that would be exempt from overtime because of their duties. But if they're just a line cook or prep cook, dishwasher, et cetera, and they're getting a salary, we would say, okay, well, this person was paid a salary of $1,000 and they worked 50 hours that week, so they were paid $20 an hour for all 50 hours. However, they weren't paid any overtime, so we would say they worked 10 hours of overtime and they get half-time rate of that $20, so 10 hours times $10, they're due an additional $100 for that week. And if that happens, and again, when we do an investigation and we realize those workers weren't paid properly, we go back for the whole 2 years and you find out, oh, this individual's owed $10,000 because we didn't pay him properly. So that's another big issue that we find. Those are the two most common, is improper overtime for tipped employees and misclassified salary employees. Child labor, I'm going to go more in detail on the next slide, but 14 and 15-year-olds have a limit on the amount of hours they can work per week, and obviously if there's a hazardous occupation involved. And then 16 and 17-year-olds, they can work any hours under federal law. Again, here we go with state and federal. Under state, they can only work a maximum of 48 hours per week, and if they do work over those 40, they have to be paid overtime for those 8 hours. Record keeping, you have to keep your records for 3 years for the Department of Labor. You have to keep a record of hours worked and pay. So if I asked you, I want to see your payroll from last July, you would be able to show me who was working, what hours they worked, and how much they were paid. It's only three years that you need to keep that. IRS is 7 years, but that's a whole different thing, but it's 3 years for us. And when we do an investigation, usually we only go back for 2 years, but if we find that it's a real bad act, or if it was knowingly, then we would do the 3rd year for any violations. So again, here's the most common ones that we went over, the tipped employee. I want to talk about quickly about pools. Tip pools are common. Only tipped employees can be in the tipped pool. It can't be kitchen workers, it can't be managers, et cetera. If there is a loophole there, or there is a way where the tip pool can be a little different, and as you probably heard, Massachusetts is trying to get minimum wage for tipped employees or sub-minimum wage employees. As a previous server and people I know in the industry, everyone seems to be against it, but the public think that they're helping out the workers by saying, oh, these poor people are only getting $6.75 an hour plus tips. They're getting $30, $40 an hour. They're not getting minimum wage, or they wouldn't be working there. So in my opinion, that's the whole thing. It depends on the vote. I think it's going to be on the ballot come this year, where they're going to say, do you vote for everyone receiving minimum wage and no more tipped employees or tip credits? That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt you guys. We've seen it in other cities that have started it, and it gets a lot of confusion, because then how much does the patron give for a tip? If the prices of the meals are going to go up, there might be surcharges. It's going to be a headache, so we'll see if that passes or not. But in the meantime, they have to be paid $6.75 an hour, and then $14.25 if they work overtime. Time and a half, like I said, if you're in a restaurant and there's more than one job, if they're the hostess and then they're the server, they're getting $20 an hour to host, and they're getting the $15 an hour in reality as a minimum wage employee. As a server, if they worked overtime, you would just say, well, how much did they receive for the whole week? You'd say, oh, they did 30 hours as a server, so 30 times 15, and then they did 20 hours as a host. You would do 20 hours times $20, so you'd get that total amount, and then you divide it by the 50 hours. So you'd say their rate of pay on average was, say, $17.24. So if they worked overtime, you would do half time of the $17.24. You can do it either way. You can do it as if they were a server after 40 hours, but it does become a headache for employees, and I've noticed that it's easier to do if you just merge the hours worked, total amount by the total hours worked. It makes it easier, because then you don't have to keep track of when did they hit their 40th hour while working. The salaried ones, as I said, that's the biggest thing we see. And I want to point out, the immigration status, we as Department of Labor, we can't ask it, we can't question, do you have immigration status? Every employee is treated the same for labor laws. So if you're you have an undocumented worker and you're paying them $15 an hour in cash. If they work overtime, you got to pay the $22.50. And you got to keep a record, because if they don't have a TIN number or whatever the reason is, keep records that you've paid these individuals, because if we get a complaint down the line and this person says, oh, I've worked there 6 months, I was only paid $10 an hour in cash, and the employer doesn't have records to show that they paid that person or what they paid them, we have to take the statement of the complainant, and the employer can't back up what they paid. We'll say, you owe this individual some back wages. So just keep a record of any payments that you make, especially if they're not on the books. You got to prove in some type of ledger or something that you've paid these people, because it does become a problem down the line. Whoops. Child labor, here's the big thing. Child labor, I don't know why, it's such a hot topic right now everywhere, but I think it has to do with, we've had a lot of issues or complaints about underage workers based on the whole migrant situation right now. We have a lot of people that have come into the country, and we have a lot of minors that are working. They're actually not going to school. They're actually saying, okay, their sponsor or whoever they're going to live with, those people are forcing the child to work, to say, hey, you got to make money if you're here, or make money to send back to your family. And they go and they get jobs, and they're working full time, and they're working in jobs they shouldn't be working. But for 14 and 15-year-olds, it's very specific. They can only work 3 hours on a school day if school is in session. They can only work between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., so it's usually from 3 o'clock to 7 is where they're going to be working. They work at Dunkin' Donuts. They may work at Market Basket. They may work at restaurants as bussers, et cetera. And they can't work more than 18 hours in a school week. So it's very limited for 14 and 15-year-olds. They want the children to remain in school and get an education and not work too many hours. If school is out, if they're on vacation, or if it's the summer, they can work up to 40 hours in a work week, maximum of 40. But it can't be in a hazardous occupation, which I'll go over in a next slide. In June, it does go up to 9 p.m. where they can work. Over the summer, they can work up until 9 p.m. instead of 7. We see a lot of violations in restaurants, that you'll have a busser that is working, and they'll work till 10 o'clock at night, and that's a violation. That's, you get fined for that, civil money penalty, so just be careful of the hours that they're working. They did a big press release on Dunkin' Donuts, because they know it's such like a brand name, where it showed they had many violations because a lot of their workers worked till like 7:30 at night. It's not a major violation, but it's not dangerous, but it's just showing that they're working too many hours as a minor, 14 and 15-year-olds. 16 and 17-year-olds, there's no restriction other in state. It's up to 48 hours, and they have a restriction under state. I think it's 11 p.m. where you can't work past 11 p.m. So that has it in the state. I don't enforce the state laws, but just take note of that as well. And the whole thing is hazardous occupations. You want to make sure that none of the 14 to 17-year-olds are involved in hazardous occupations. It's really common sense. Ones that come out for restaurants, like they always say, a meat slicer. If you have a meat slicer in the back, you have to be 18 to use that if you're slicing anything, cold meats or prosciutto or whatever. And in the bakery type of issue is if there's a commercial mixer, that's one you can't use, because if you just think of it where you can have serious injury while using or doing that job, that's going to most likely be a violation. I have a booklet here that is specific, but the best way to do it is go online, and it lists all the jobs 14 and 15-year-olds can do. If it's not on that list, they can't do it. And then they have a list of jobs that 16 and 17-year-olds can't do, and if it's on that list, they can't do it. Another one I just want to throw out is any delivery drivers. You can drive at age 17 as part of your job under the law, but if you're a delivery driver, or if it's a timed delivery, you have to be 18. So all the pizza delivery people, or any restaurants, Chinese food, or even any restaurants, you can't be a delivery driver for that restaurant until you're 18. You don't have the driving experience, so they're saying, well, if they're rushing to get this order delivered, you don't want them to get in an accident, and it's a safety issue. Rest and meal periods, it's a common violation in the hospitality industry. If you do automatically deduct 30 minutes per shift, make sure you have evidence or something that shows that individual took a break. The best way to do it is they clock in and out if they're taking a formal break, and you're not paying them, because if it's over 20 minutes and they're relieved from their duties, you don't have to pay them. If it's under 20 minutes, it's usually 15, you do have to pay them if they just went outside to get a breath of fresh air for 5 minutes. That's not enough to take them off the pay time clock. So if you do have people that you say, I want you to take a break because I'm going to give you 30 minutes break, have them punch in and out. Especially, it's easier now with everything electronic. Just have them go on the computer and say, punched out for a half hour, just so that if we get a complaint, the person says, oh, I never got a break when I worked at this restaurant. We just worked. If it wasn't busy, we were doing roll-ups, we were doing this. If there's no evidence that the employer can show that they took a break, then we'll say, well, you owe this person 30 minutes for each shift over the last 2 years. So it's all to cover yourself. And the thing I want to point out is everyone tries to work well with their employees and you have good relationships, but once that relationship is soured, the employee just goes after their employer and nitpicks any way that they can to get any additional money or throw them under the bus. So just be careful of that. And especially if you're working with people you're paying cash, that's the biggest thing, because if you don't have a record of that, you're kind of screwed after 2 years where you're going to have to pay this person $30,000, $40,000, because once they leave and they're upset with you or, they break ties, they'll come after you, and you just want to cover yourself. I'm almost done here, but misclassification is another thing that companies will try to do to save money. As we know, it's very hard with all the requirements. A lot of restaurants are going out of business because it's so much costs. So they may try to classify their workers as independent contractors. That's a big red flag for us. Independent contractor is overused so much, especially in construction industry, and we do see it in hospitality. We may see that, the kitchen workers are all hired from a temp agency or a third-party agency, and the employer may not know how they're being paid, and the temp agency may be employing them as an independent contractor. But businesses will do it to try to save money because you don't need to get unemployment insurance, you don't need to get the DIA, which they were talking about, workman's comp, so they try to save that way, but it's going to hurt you if something happens, so you just want to be prepared for that. So if someone's in the kitchen and they're an independent contractor, they're a dishwasher, they'll say, oh, I wash dishes for my own company. That doesn't fly. You're like, no, you work at this company, you're supervised by them, you don't work at other locations as well. If you have your own company and you're doing 3 days of work here at, on a specialized thing, and then 3 days at another location and 2 days here, then you're an independent contractor, you have your own company. And we'd say, oh, what's the company name? Do you have, taxes to show what you did? We know when someone's an employee versus an independent contractor. It gets very in-depth legally, but if it's common sense where you know that this is my employee and I have to pay them as an employee, they're covered under the Fair Labor Standards Act, I have to pay them overtime, et cetera. So our website is just dol.gov. Everything is on there. I know, Ralphie stated that, you go on the website, everything is there. I don't have it. It wasn't in on this slide, but it's on. You can take one of these pamphlets, but our website is dol.gov, and you can go in there for anything. It goes by topics. It has fact sheets, so it makes it nice, like child care fact sheet. It will just give a 2-page sheet giving the specifics on 14 and 15-year-olds or 16 and 17-year-olds. Or if you have a question and you're reading something and it's confusing, we have a national number, and it really does work. Again, it's on our pamphlets here, but it's 866-4-US-WAGE. And it's an 800 number, 866, but it goes to our phone bank. You have to enter your zip code, and it gets forwarded to the office with that zip code. So we have an office in Springfield or Boston. You'd get probably most likely forwarded to Boston. A live person answers every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, if you have any questions. You just want to be careful. Again, child labor, keep an eye on it, because we're going to come in there and we may fine you and say, you did this improper, but if something happens to that child and you're in violation while something happens, then you're going to get sued by the family. So that's what you have to think of, if someone's 15 working in the kitchen, and you're like, oh, I just need this, go do that, go do the meat slicer, and they go and they, they cut their finger off, that family's gonna sue you. We're gonna give you a fine, which, it hurts, $5,000, $10,000, but that family's gonna go after you for violating the law and not protecting their child. So I just wanted to point out a few general things because our law is so complicated. But if anyone has any questions, I can answer them. And if not, you can grab a pamphlet and we have all the contact information there. I tried to keep it short and to the point for hospitality. But any questions? Are you guys good? Yep.
I have a question about in some cities and some restaurants and some cities they charge you for admin fees or employees or kitchen fees. How that can beneficial restaurant owners to?
Restaurant owners can't do that, and they'll be questioned, most likely questioned by the patron and saying, oh, what's this fee for? And a lot of times you'll explain that, we try to make it have some fairness in payments. It helps pay back of the house employees where we use that charge for that, or, it's up to you as the owner, as long as you're in compliance with minimum wage and overtime. Go ahead.
But we have to pay anyway minimum wage, or that we have to support for the minimum wage payment or anything like that, you don't know?
No, I have seen an increase in service charges, 3% or something, and you see that because of admin fee, yeah, whatever you want to call it. The patron may ask, what is this for? Do I have to pay it? And you're like, well, this is to help us with the costs because we're trying to keep our menu prices low, and we have to increase pay to the minimum wage keeps going up, obviously, at $15, and now they're talking about it going up again. But yeah, that's not actually whatever you explain to the patron, like, oh, we use that to give extra money to the kitchen workers, okay, or we use that to offset higher prices for ordering products. As long as you're telling them the truth. It's hard to say, okay, this is for the kitchen workers, and then we do a case and we'll say the service charge wasn't meant for the kitchen workers, but then we got to find out where they told it was going to be. It gets very gray, but most people aren't going to complain about that, 1, 2, 3% charge.
I asked, and they don't have answers.
Yeah, it depends where you are.
Because they say kitchen, they say that some kind of fee. I said, how much of this money goes to the employee?
Right. So the manager would have to answer that.
1% or can be 9%.
Right. But usually, we've seen it, is that money is supposed to go to back of the house workers, because it's not fair when you have a night where it's crazy busy and the servers make, $300, $400 that night, and the kitchen worked a lot harder that night and still only received their $20 an hour. So they're using those service charges to offset the extra work that's done by the kitchen workers. But it's a gray area, and a lot of places have been doing that lately.
Do that.
They are allowed.
If the guesses will be, they want to pay.
Yeah, and they say, I disagree with this, say, well, we have to do that in order to keep our restaurant open. We need that extra 3%.
What I see is, and I do that myself sometimes, when there is very high fee, I sacrifice the tip for the service.
Yeah.
Because, okay, they charge me 4 or 5% more.
Right.
I tip less.
Yeah, that's the customer's choice. Yeah, no, I agree with that. It does happen because you're like, well, wait a minute, where is all this money going? So, but yeah, restaurants are allowed to do that. It has to say it on the menu so that you get the bill and you see it, and you already ate at that point, so you have to pay it. But if they come in and they see that, they'll say, oh, I don't want to eat here. I don't want to pay this extra 3 or 4%. But if they have already eaten and it's done, they have to. As long as it's on the menu, they're notified of it. Yeah, they have to be notified of it. And if not, get to the manager, and the manager wants to give them their 3% back. It gets messy, but yeah, that's not enforced by.
I see that happen after.
Yeah.
I see that was a big fee,
Yep.
especially in Boston area.
Yeah, I know. So, but that's the best I can do to explain that. But again, anything online, everything's great today because on the computer you can get your questions answered so easily. And if not, we do have a live person that answers questions. And if you're on the fence, you don't know, just call. You don't even have to say who you are. You just say, oh, I'm going to hire a 15-year-old. Can he do this? And we'll give you the answer. So, Ralph, do you have any closing statements? But thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just to wrap up here, we ran a little later, but it was great questions, and I mean, the time was for you today. I just want to wrap up and thank a few people. I want to thank the entire board from Fitchburg. They were really excited, along with Joanne. I talked to more than my wife this past month, so I just want to let you know. But they were on top of everything, and they were here to help you. So that was a great thing. When we proposed the program to the chair of the board, I said, this has really gone great. And the towns, when the city of Framingham and Lawrence, they jumped right on it to help you. So I just want to thank everybody, invite Joanne up to say the parting. There's a ton of brochures up here to take. It's good information to keep for you.
Thank you. Thank you all. There was great information. I just want to recap, every year we got annual renewals. They're going to be every year. We know we're doing them. We got to get the stuff into us. Last year, there was a couple people that we didn't have some things, and we still gave them the license. We can't do that. If we don't have everything we need for your annual permit by 4:30 on 12/31, we have to give that list to the police department as well as the ABCC, and they go at midnight on New Year's Eve, and they have to shut the establishment. And we don't want to do that to anybody. It's not our goal. We want to work as best we can with you. But you know you got to get the building department, the Board of Health, the tax compliant. Those are things we've got to get. So we got to make sure that's all submitted to us by 12/31 or by 4:30, or we have to then send that list to, and I say 4:30 based on when that day falls. It could be noon if they're closing City Hall early. So do everything you can to make sure, starting the end of October, beginning of November, you're booking appointments with these said boards to get those things, because if 60 people start writing to the building department December 1st, the week of December, first 2 weeks of December, they're not going to be able to fit 70 of you in those 2 weeks. So let's make sure we're doing everything we can to get that done. And I appreciate all of you showing up today, and always any questions you have, my office's goal is here to support you. Please reach out to us anytime. All right? Thank you all, and have a great, great day. Great job, everyone.